you go. Hey, Rock, how you going?
Good.
Good. Welcome. Haven't seen you for a couple of years now, and I know you've been having some sciatic problems that have been causing you a lot of grief for the last few years.
Yep.
You know, I just for an introduction, Rock and I have known each other for 20-something years, 22 years, 23 years, and I used to work on him a lot when I lived in Hawaii, but that was now 12 or 15 years ago. Wait, 2012, where are we at? Yeah, 13 years ago I left there. So, and I haven't worked on you since then, have I?
Nope.
And so what's been happening?
Just, I think just over time, like I built up a lot of tension and played vigorous tennis for many, many years. And I think I've overdone it, and just stress and stuff has built up. And about 15 months ago, I was playing tennis, and I kind of was feeling like I have had some reoccurring sciatica issues, back problems, and I overdid it, and then had this real bad outbreak of sciatica where I went to the ER. It was just terrible pain, and after that, this kind of nerve pain set in. It was in the hip, and then it went down this right leg, and it for about 3 or 4 months, it was just excruciating. I couldn't sleep, and then finally the pain subsided, but from my knee to my foot just continued to be numb and tingling. So from then on, I've just had this issue and for several months after this first arising, I would just be off balance, legs been weaker on this side, and just has become more and more a concern that like this is going to be a chronic lifetime thing, and also that the pain could come back. It's not painful right now, but I'm just really scared that at some point this like pain's going to come back. I won't be able to sleep, and just you don't really have any remedy. So I've gone to a lot of different practitioners, acupuncture, chiropractic, other massage therapist, osteopath, and nothing's really kind of worked. And so Brandon, I knew that he had helped me a lot in the past, so giving this kind of a Hail Mary pass, coming here to visit him and catch up, but also see if he can help relieve some of this problem.
All right, great. So I had a very quick look at your areas last night, and they were extremely tight. So I'll do a bit more of a diagnosis today. I was going to start with a head massage just to relax you. Your belly was super tight, so I'm going to do a bit of assisted belly breathing, and then we're going to get into each toe. Especially, we're going to start with that right side that's bad, if you can handle that. If not, I'll do the other side if it's like too painful, just to ease you into it. But we'll see if we can get, like, my objective at looking at what was going on with you last night is to get 1 or 2 toes in each session. You're here for a few days, come over from Oregon, Salem, Oregon to St. Louis. So, well, welcome, and let's get into it.
I should say one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
So from all this, the root cause, and I did get an MRI, and I've got 4 bulging discs in my lower back. So I think that's probably a big part of the problem with where it's the nerve pain's coming from. And so anyway, that's my kind of diagnosis, I guess you'd say, from a medical
perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right, cool. If that breeze gets too cold, let me know.
I guess you're like a sculptor, and you're like checking on your coming down and checking on the chiseling from yesterday.
Absolutely. I call it life sculpting. Like a great spiritual teacher once talked about, the soul being the diamond covered in mud, and I feel like I'm cutting away at some of that mud. It's different, but, similar analogy,
Yeah.
You got the pure life force, the pure spirit, and then you got all this That's why I say my main job is a glorified sewage worker.
Well, things typically the next day, like, like I said, I guess it just depends, but sometimes the release sticks and sometimes it might pop back or something. Like, if a lot of the tension's still there, or.
Yeah, I think more commonly, if we don't get it out by its roots, then it'll come back very quickly, like a weed in the garden sort of thing. And then, like, obviously things can go back out, and there's going to be differences because, like, say, for example, we've done a lot, 5 or 6 hours work or whatever on that leg mostly, right? So it's going to affect then also your posture, because suddenly you've gone from having your tighter leg on one side, as we were, as you felt yesterday, now your tighter leg's actually the other one,
Mm-hmm.
And so it can then throw a few things out as well in that temporary period where, we've done one leg and not the other.
Like balance.
Yeah, your balance is like going to be a little bit different, and yeah, most of the time what I find is people notice, all of a sudden they notice how tight they are on the other side, even though I have, because they got something to compare to now as well.
Yeah.
Hey, if you guys are interested in learning about Raynor Massage, I encourage you to take our online course. You can find that on our website, raynormassage.com, and do a search for our online course. You can also do in-person courses. I'll be holding one in Australia in May, and I'm teaching in St. Louis in June. And then we have, if you go onto our website, raynormassage.com, worldwide massage courses, you can find courses all over the world, especially in Canada, the UK, Australia, New Zealand sometimes, and the US. So please learn Raynor Massage. We're also hoping to hold some courses for friends and family, so like 2-day workshops in St. Louis, where you can just come and learn, bring a friend. You don't have to, but you can bring a friend or your partner and come and learn how to do some basic work on each other to maintain each other. And we're looking at doing some 2-day reflexology workshops as well, both here and possibly in Australia. So please just contact me, brandonraynor@gmail.com, if you have any questions or would like to learn more. Enjoy the video. I once, I was teaching a course and I did a demo on a guy, and I did like 2 hours on one leg, and I really loosened it up. And like 5 years later, I saw him and he's going, remember when you did that demo on me? And I'm like, oh yeah, 7,432 massages ago. I remember clearly, But anyway, he was like, he's like, man, I still feel one leg's looser than the other, Because like in that 2 hours, we obviously, if he was, say, 35 or something, we might have gotten rid of 25 years worth of tension in one leg. So he might still have had 10 years worth, but then he adds another 5 years and he still feels the difference between, 40 years of tension in one leg and 20 in the other.
Wow.
So a lot of the way I'm working these days is it's like, permanent in the sense of, if we got 30% out of that leg, that's 30% out. Not to say that you couldn't do something with your body and put some of that back in, but it obviously took you a long time to get that tight, and that's why when I talk about excavation, I encourage people to go the 100%, if they can. Most people, that's 10 to 40 hours, but that's under the age of 60, as people are getting into any older than that, it can be up to 100 hours, or like with Phyllis, this lady, it's more than 100, who's in her 80s, because you can hardly touch her toe, like you're trying to loosen her, but the pain threshold, because the tension's so great, she actually had a pretty good pain threshold, but she was so tight, 80 years worth of tension. So it just takes time, but then she doesn't have that all she feels is, wow, I feel 20 years younger. I feel like I'm 65, not 85,
Mm-hmm.
So she just feels better. She doesn't, whereas I'm looking at what still needs to be done to make her as tension-free as we can possibly get her,
Have you kept in touch with her at all?
Yeah, I see her every year or two.
And so how is her life?
She sees one of my therapists quite regularly that I've trained in Gympie. And it's massively improved, for her. her doctors couldn't believe it because it's basically reversing arthritis, you know. And then she ended up referring her doctors to my student there, and you know, her nurses, and and some of even her kids. And some people, you know, could handle it, and other people just, oh, it's too, you know, I don't want to feel this pain when I'm getting a massage. You know, she's like, it's funny because she'd come into the course, this 85-year-old woman, breathe, tell this dude, come on, you can do it. You know, this whole country Australian accent. She's such a character. I love her, she's cool.
How many, is there like a lot of Australian dialects, like, you know, meaning like in the U.S., like you said, you're just describing that is there like the upper crust dialect and the...
There is a few. There is a variation once you get there and you start to realize, and you can tell the difference between, I can tell the difference, like, so certain of the states were definitely like prison colonies, you know, like New South Wales and Tasmania in particular. Like the Tasmanian accent's quite strong. I live down there, and it's like, you going, yeah, fine, all right, yeah, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you got what's called an ochre accent, which is kind of like a real working class Aussie, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's definitely, it's kind of like every second, it's a kind of, yeah, it's every second word's a swear word, and a lot of kind of mumbling, you know. Then you've got people that are obviously more upper class English, and it's particularly around Adelaide, I find they tend to speak a little bit more properly and hold themselves differently, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Like white New Zealanders, because white New Zealanders weren't prisoners, you know, so they almost resemble upper class English people.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas your Aussies, you know, a third were Irish, so that was a big influence, and then a lot were from like East London Cockneys and stuff, so lower class English. And yeah, you can tell the difference. And then you've got Aboriginal accent, which is a bit different again.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, so Adelaide and Perth, they tend to be. It feels to me like they're more straight, what I'd call straight. You know, like yeah, definitely not coming from that kind of convict. And that whole convict thing really kind of twisted people, because they, like the Cockneys used to speak in a way. They'd especially speak in a language that the what they call the screws, you know, the prison guards couldn't understand.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot more slang with, you know, and you know, like that was the traditional thing with Australian. Like they'd call a redhead bluey. They'd call, you know, it was just kind of like all this shit. You had to kind of understand what the hell they're talking about. So the accent's different, the slang's different, you know, but it's not as varied as like the UK or America, you know, where you got the Alabama accent, and you got like New Jersey, you know, and all that, you know.
Mm-hmm.
The variations aren't quite as strong, but you definitely can see the different classes. Corey didn't believe me, some of my, because I can do some good Australian accents, and then we go past this pub, the guy's speaking exactly like that, you know. I always say for Americans to go there, if you want to speak Australian, mumble, like as if you're drunk, you know. Don't pronounce R's on the end of words, and swear a lot more than you would here. And just fucking throw in a mate every once in a while. Every second sentence should include the word fucking. You fucking go, mate, you fucking, you know. And you just mumble a lot. And basically, make sure your communication doesn't have a lot of in-depth meaning. And every second sentence is kind of an attempt at a joke, which often fails, but you know, you're supposed to laugh as if you're drunk anyway, and it doesn't mean anything, you know? That's the high Australian cultural standards. Yeah, I couldn't believe it, like coming to St. Louis, like you drive around, and it's like there's no pubs, you know, there's no, you know, there's like a few like shady looking liquor establishment things that are like liquor stores, you know, but they're not. Like in Australia, if you go into a town, there's just pubs everywhere, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like replace the pubs with churches, and that's one of the differences between Australia and America, which is pretty fundamental.
kind of tender.
Bit too. Maybe I'll go a bit lighter. Yeah.
It's fine. I was just
Yeah.
saying. I was just noting the, like, kind of curious about, like, well, what's
Yeah.
why is that kind of like. No, but it's
It's
the
fine.
pressure is fine. I just
Right.
kind of trying to note, like, and that you might like kind of just react. Oh yeah, that's because blankety blank or whatever.
I think that's just because I was working there yesterday. Mostly that was a bit sore. Sometimes like working the second 2 days in a row in the same spot. It's kind of like going to the gym and working a muscle twice. You sort of need that time to recuperate. Just on the temporary muscle area. Most people, I find are actually a little bit sore on areas that I've worked but not released. Once the muscle's released, it's not sore. But
Oh,
if you sort
so
of work it a bit, and maybe you haven't got the roots out completely, or then they're a bit sore on that area.
Oh, so the soreness, if you're saying that if it's released, then there's
Yeah.
likely not going to be the soreness.
Yeah, that's right. It's like the blood flow comes in. But if you've worked a spot, and that's what I learned, why it's so important to work the bands at the end, is because if you work higher up on a band of tension, and you keep trying to push it to get it out, you're like, okay, come on, get this thing out, like what I call a yang style approach,
Yeah.
You can just make it sore. You can overwork it. You don't really loosen it. You just make it kind of sore because the anchor points aren't gone. And so the person will just feel a bit sore there the next day, and pretty much their tension will come back pretty quick too. That's why it's so important to get things out from the roots.
It's interesting. You also kind of like this jaws thing. This is like
Yeah.
this is like
The key.
lifetime, like
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
like
yeah.
stress. Like I've
Uh-huh.
just kind of like that's been obviously a defense mechanism thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's sort of, I think, going to be a key thing in your treatment plan and your healing is getting to the root cause of whatever like this is, like kind of right in here.
Yeah.
Why is it so, what we call so bloody tight in Australia, But as we were talking about yesterday, it's that kind of like, it's a power trip, that people can put onto you as well. Like, if you got something to say that's going to stir people up, bring up their stuff because you're speaking truth. Our society is so full of bullshit, you know what I mean? And full of like control and, you should be a good little fucking boy and shut the fuck up and,
Yeah.
don't question and, and that can lead to, and there's, it's going on for generations, you know what I mean? It's like kind of like, and we absorb that even from our parents. They had to deal with that, and
Yeah.
I think it does go back to the corruption of so long ago, You could look at Henry VIII, you could look at, the Roman Empire, It's a fucking weird ass world.
Yeah.
So I'm just trying to go fairly gentle so that I can loosen it, but I don't want it to be overwhelmingly painful.
Yeah, it feels real gentle.
Yeah. Is it too gentle?
I think it's appropriate.
Oh yeah, that was I know myself, I had a really tight jaw for a long time.
Really?
Yeah. It was really painful once you worked on it. You got to get that right pressure in the jaw, otherwise it's easy to hit that point where it's just too much, And you want to feel it, you want to coax it, like I call it coaxing to release. You're like, okay, come on, let go, not forcing. It's not like I'm gonna, if I just force into there, it's just like bruising, and it's like an assault on the body, whereas like when I'm trying to bring into my fingers is more like an energy of, come on, let it go. Because when you think about it, a lot of it is mental anyway. You know, like it's like, why did we tighten up our jaw? You know.
So the sensitivity is like you said, you're just seeing with the fingers are kind of like you're kind of seeing that line.
Yeah.
Or you've developed that over time.
Over time, yeah. It's like seeing in the dark, you know what I mean, or listening. You know, like a lot of people could go into a forest and not know what they're hearing. You know, just noise to them. You know, whereas somebody who's used to that forest can go, that's the bird call of this. That's the the sound of this. Whatever, this animal. You know.
So you have your eyes closed right now.
Yeah, I have my eyes closed right now. So because I feel like I can focus better with my eyes closed because I'm going right in. Like like I said, it's like a kind of X-ray, or you know what I mean? Like you're kind of like going into this other time, like seeing with a different realm. Yeah, seeing with a different eye, you know. And I'm just and really bringing my awareness into my fingers, both from a receptive point of view of going what's going on, but also bringing a certain energy in there. Like I said, of trying to go, come on, let this go. You know, like it's my intention. You know.
Yeah.
Which is to try and encourage you to let it go. But you know, it's so solid, your jaw. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it's not just given away easy and what we call a stubborn fucker. You know, not to insult you. I'm just saying, you know, this tension in particular.
Yeah.
Like you say, I feel like this has been there a fucking long time. You know what I mean? Like it's like this is going back. You know, this isn't like, ooh, my jaw tightened up yesterday. It's like my fucking jaw's been tight for a long friggin' time. And so if I get to a point where I can't loosen up the jaw anymore, it's also related to these bands coming down here, which you can feel are quite tight on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And that's coming from the thumbs. So sometimes I even then go, okay, let me change my strategy a bit and let me work, because like say you're tightening your jaw up when I'm working on your feet and the energy's not able to come out, then what I'll do is, okay, let's do actually the thumbs so that we can get this to kind of be nice and soft. And then when I work the feet, push that energy up, that it actually comes out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I still remember when I did a head massage on a lady in one of my courses. I got it on video. And I did her jaw, and this massive emotional release came out, and this energy, and her whole body was shaking, and, you know, so much had been held in her jaw, you know?
Didn't our friend Jason, he had that thing with his knee, right?
Yeah, he had quite a few experiences there with different things.
Or like it was something like an old girlfriend who'd dumped him when he was 16,
Oh, yeah.
and it was like, and when you...
In his knee, yeah.
Yeah.
He was about to have like a knee surgery or something. I forgot. Something was going on. And yeah, once that came out, all that emotion and energy came out.
Dang, that's just like, so like it's cosmic, you know? It's just
Well,
like,
it is.
what? Like, what?
It's like you store shit in your body, you know? I mean,
How do you separate in your mind? Because like, my wife will mention that during her intro for classes about memories being stored in like the gut. I guess, but I think I was under, like, I think I was under the erroneous thinking always like, the mind is subtle, but I was always thinking it was like kind of attached to the brain, but it's actually because it's just covering the spirit soul. So it's like your whole body could be basically memories are it's
not just the brain.
It's not just in the covering is over
brain
isn't
matter,
over in the
brain.
brain, it's the coverings over the
over the entire body.
so it's like that's kind of like really far out to really think about, right? Because because it's like your knee, your
Because
jaw.
it's also kind of like there's not a strong. The brain and the nervous system are so connected, right?
so it's
not
spreading it through all the
the nerves and everything as well. But it's kind of like, to me, I just take a awe and reverence point of view to the understanding, because people can go, oh, you know, through anatomy and all that, we can, physiology, we can understand the human body. Yeah, because they study dead ones. But can you understand the interaction between the soul, the memories, the emotions, you know, the subtle body and the physical? And it's like, oh no, we haven't studied that very well. We don't understand that. You know, they don't understand much about sleeping. They don't understand much about dreams. They don't understand, you know, like how do dreams work. You know what I mean? You know, oh well, we haven't really kind of understood that yet. You know, I'm gonna do some work on your thumbs to just try.